turn this off. My name is John Edmonds. I'm an alcoholic. I thought we started at 8:30. I was getting ready to go to my room, and I'm glad I didn't. We'll see about that. We as a group prayed together with Diane before the meeting, and she said, include John in your prayers. And I said, no, we need to wait and pray in between the meetings because I can get in a lot of trouble in an hour and a half, between the meetings. So we didn't get a chance to do that. So it's going to be all right. This has been a really exciting evening. The energy here is incredible. I've been so impressed. Sarah Lynn, where'd she go? I don't know where she went, but there she is. See if I call anybody else up. I've done a few of these things, and sometimes the communication is awful. You're like, hey, are we still doing this conference this weekend? But Sarah Lynn has been on top of it. You guys should put her in charge. Incredible, really. We were talking to one of the committee members outside in the hall, and someone said that it takes 40 committee members to put this on. And they meet 15 times throughout the year. I mean, you could probably get that done with 3 or 4 Dianes. You wouldn't need 40, but really, thank you for your service. And I don't know, everyone was here for Chris's, what do you call that? Convocation, whatever it was. She, I want to make sure I got this right. She said, my job is to speak, your job is to listen, and if you're done before I am, let me know. And I was thinking, next time my wife and I have a budget meeting, I'm going to break that out. Listen, honey, my job is to speak, your job is to listen. I will run that by my sponsor before I do that. I'm not ready for celibacy yet. Really, thanks to the committee for putting this on. I hope, these weekends are really great. I know a lot of the speakers, like Diane said, it's going to be a great weekend. But the speakers don't make it great. I'm here to tell you. What makes it great is the conversations going to get coffee. It's when that new guy or gal says, hey, can I get 15 minutes from you? We a bunch of us went out to, a few of us went out to dinner, and we had a new guy with us, 5 days in. And, and he was hurting a little bit, man. I said, man, we don't shoot our wounded brother. And he was so touched. He's like, man, I just needed to hear that. I thought they were all going to beat me up for drinking. And Alcoholics Anonymous, brother, that's what we do, right? We drink. So thanks to everyone who put this on, and my host, Brian, he's my host. And I knew I got picked up by one of my people because we got in the car. Well, first he texted me, a couple times, last week, whatever. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. This is my first time, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be great. I'm going to pick you up. And it was great. We had good, good communication. And so I get in the car, and I said, man, hey, how you doing? And he said, I'm doing great. And then, for the next hour and a half, he told me his fifth step. He's like, well, I moved here when I was 12, and I had to go to California, and then my girlfriend brought with me, and I got this job. I'm a client at Towers, and I relapsed, and I've been sober in 12 years. And man, man, how you doing today? Not the last, but it was good. We had a good talk. But what really made me know that it was my people was he threw on the GPS, and I think it said 52 miles from the airport. And his car on the screen flashed up 50 miles to empty. That's our people, right? And I kind of look over at him, and he looks over at me, he's like, and? I'm like, yeah. And, he assumed, with some highway miles, he's going to make up some ground. At least that's what I would have assumed. But the funny thing is, so we made it, and I figured it's no big deal. I don't need to, don't need to sharpen my Al-Anon skills. We don't need to stop for gas. Like, it's only noon. I speak at 8:30. Whatever. Like, Amy's flying in at 3:30. Worst case, I'm ready, on the side of the road. And but the funny thing is, we go out to dinner, and he's like, "Yeah, we're going to go across the street. It's about 3 miles away. No big deal. Plenty of time. 3 miles back, 3 miles up. 6 miles." We get in his car. It says 8 miles to empty still. So I said, "There's hope for Brian." And then we go to dinner. This is the last thing. And then we go to dinner. He goes, "Don't worry, I'm going to put a fresh 10 spot in it." That's our people. It took a long time until I could fill up a gas tank. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they might come get this tonight. Like, I'm not filling that tank. So, sober. It's not that funny, ma'am. She's had a couple cars repossessed. I have. I'm not, not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. My wife was supposed to come. She would have loved this weekend. You got the wrong Edmonds here speaking tonight. I promise you that. She's a much better person, just my spiritual lighthouse. I got to be in her first AA meeting 33 years ago, and I was going to say I fell in love with her that moment, but that's a little stretch. I hadn't met her yet, but I can still tell you maybe the word's lust. She walked in, and she had her hair up, and she had these medical scrubs on, and she came in and emotionally threw up over the whole meeting, just toxic as hell. And she's just put a nice everything, and I said, "That's the one for me." And I swear to God, that's true. I swear to you, that's true. The only problem was that she was married and I was engaged, but God figured all that out. 33 years later, here we are. This is true. Her husband, who was in the program, literally was a fill-in usher at my wedding. So, but God figured all that out, and I'm really grateful for that. She's at home now, taking care of my mother, and and thinking about weekends like this. How many people here, in their first year of recovery, wow, what a great number. Throughout this weekend, you're probably going to hear a whole lot about this God business, and I beg of you not to run out of here. I assure you, when we talk about God this weekend, we don't mean what you think we mean when we say God. Right? We're talking about something different. I'm not saying it's bad, we're talking about something different. And so, the cool thing is all of the great religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Mother Earthism, Buddhism, whatever ism, they all have one thing in common. Do you know what that is? They send their drunks to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a fact. It's a fact. So don't let that scare you out. We desperately need you. And, in Dr. Bob's last talk, he's known for that love and service bit, right? And that's so powerful, a lot of us stop reading. But the good stuff is a little bit later. The next paragraph, he says, none of us would be here today if someone hadn't taken the time to explain things to us. Take us to a meeting or two, right, to say a kind word. So let us guard the erring member of the tongue. What powerful words. This guy in my home group last night, we have a tradition meeting once a month. And he said, he used to, when someone would violate the traditions, he would give them such a hard time that the demonizing was worse than the tradition violation. And I thought, man, God, have I done that, So this weekend, when you see somebody, that looks relatively new, that's, just sitting off in the corner, pretending to have friends on Facebook, go out there and say, man, let's go to a meeting, let's go to talk, let's go to breakfast, I'm so grateful for the old guys that saved my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. I could not be grateful enough. So we're going to talk a lot about God, and my job is to be a seeker. My relationship with God is the most important thing in my life today. Unfortunately, I don't always act that way. I need a lot of help. I'm being honest. I need a lot of help to act that way. This morning I meditate in the shower. I have tinnitus in my ear. My ear hasn't stopped ringing for about 4 or 5 years. A lot of fun. But when I'm in the shower, I don't hear it, and so I meditate in the shower. And in my morning meditation, I ask God to send me love wherever I go. I send love to this conference, and I said, God, please help me be loving to anybody I meet today, and please help me be kind to everybody I meet today. You got to be careful what you pray for. Guys, okay, let's try this out. And, instantly, I told my wife, she's like, what time do we leave? I said, I want to leave at 8 for the airport. She said, okay. Well, she didn't get in the car till 8:05. So now I'm like, oh, day's over. And, and then we got in her car, and there was no gas in the car. I'm like, don't you think about anybody but yourself, and I didn't say that. These are the things I think, because I wanted to get there early because I wanted to sign up for TSA because I'm tired of taking my belt off and my computer out of my bags all the time. And so I got there, and they really weren't doing their job correctly. And but I was patient, and I was kind. I looked kind, and I acted kind. That's about as good as I could do. And but I wanted to be kind, and so it was fine. And then we got on the plane. This is a true story. We got on the plane, and I was flying it with Mike and Diane, and we didn't get seats together. But I'm sitting, and we were on Southwest. It's like it's a bus that flies. And so they said it was a full flight, but they always lie to you. And so I put some stuff on the middle seat, and I kind of pretend to be asleep to keep anyone out of the middle seat. And I promise this is getting to be about recovery in a moment. And so this guy comes rushing in, he's like the last guy on the plane. He's like, oh, the last seat. And he's like, may I sit there? I'm like, oh, sure, of course. I'd be happy to share that seat with you. And because I'm a big guy, there's not a lot of room in Southwest. That's why cool, move all my stuff, and he wants to talk right away. And he's like leaning a little bit into my space, just a little bit, And I'm like, all right, cool, and it's just chatty Cathy, He's like, oh, he's telling me about he had to check his bag, and he had to check his bag at the thing. He's like, do you think I'm going to get my bag? I'm going to Wisconsin, or going, He's like, I'm really worried about my bag, and I'm like, he's like, I had to run down the hallway, and I was like, man, I don't know, but I'm being kind, and pretty much pretending at this point. And so, I did the nicety thing, and I thought, just what, I need more caffeine. I will slow down at some point, I promise. It's like, all right, I open up my iPad, I got this cool book I'm reading. This will kind of give him a hint, like, time to shut up. So I open it up, and I start reading, and put on my little readers, and he picks up his pace. And I'm, And so I was like, all right, cool. Because I got reminded of that prayer I said, my job is to be kind today. So, some time goes on, and I think he's at a breaking point, pauses briefly. And so I just throw my head back and I close my eyes. And he still starts going. And then I started laughing at myself, and I thought about, because my God's got a sense of humor. And I think about, you ever have somebody in your home group go on 3 or 4 minutes too long? I don't know if they did that in Wisconsin, but what you have to pay attention to when that happens, unless it's the crusty old guy, don't worry about that, but when it's a new guy or gal, turn up your hearing at the end. This is, I'm telling you, sage advice. When someone's going on and on and on about Nonsenseville, listen harder the farther they go. Because what they're going to do at the very end, they're going to drop a bomb. They're going to be like, I was watching the game last night, blah, 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 and I'm, getting my 90-day chip, and they'll go on and on, and And they're like, yeah, my dad has cancer and my wife left me and I'm going to kill myself tonight. Thanks for letting me share. Like at the very end, they'll finally drop this bomb. And I was reminded of that on the plane with this dude. I'm like, he's trying to see if I'll really listen. And this dude says, yeah, I'm from, he told me where it's, so I'm on the way to Wisconsin. My mom died. And I was like, John, you are such, the word. God is so funny. And so now I'm really listening, and now I'm really being kind. And we're talking, and he says, yeah, she was 97, and she had Alzheimer's disease, and it was an awful death. And I said, my mom was at home, in an assisted living home. She got Alzheimer's, she got stage 5 Parkinson's. She's knocked on death's door so many times I can't tell you. It wasn't about, for a moment I paused when I was talking to him about his mother. I was like, aren't I great? I'm giving this guy a gift. And lo and behold, the gift wasn't for him, it was for both of us, And that's what happens this weekend is when two people get together, when you grab that guy or the gal in the coffee pot, or, the person that's out on the margins, you bring them back into the middle. That's where God exists, And I'm so grateful that the old guys loved me enough to show me that. And so, when we get to talk at a podium like this, our job is to, man, that went a lot longer than I thought. To tell what it was like and what happened and what it's like now. And I really think that there's a better description. And I think it's on page 29. Someone will correct me, I'm sure. It says, each person in their own way describes in their personal stories how they establish their relationship with God. And I hope that's what I have the ability to do tonight. Because it's the most important thing in my life. And I forget that on a regular basis. I forget that when it's 8:03 and I'm in the car and I'm ready and I told my wife 8, I forget that when the guy comes rushing into the, sitting next to me and wants to chat, I want to read, brother, you know what I mean? And that's why I still come to AA, 35 years later. That's why I still sponsor guys. That's why I go to the prison. That's why I go to the treatment center on Monday nights, My friend Harold, who's going to share tomorrow morning, told me a long time ago, like, if you don't ever want to go back to drinking, find a place once a week that you don't want to go to and go, And that's what I've done. That's what I've done. And it's really transformed that. It's a place I don't want to be a resident of, but I want to go, right? Like Monday nights, I'm going to prison. You know what I mean? There's only a couple of things that'll keep me from the prison Monday night, and I'm grateful for that. I got sober a long time ago, at least for me it was. I got sober July 5th, 1989, right around the time you guys were starting this conference. It's 35 years old, I'm 35 years sober, and I got to tell you, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, it was not my plan to be in Wisconsin tonight. No, I love being here. I'm so excited to be here and honored to be here. Don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, I was just getting over one more time. I was a kid. I was 17 years old when I got sober, and that was my second trip. That was my second trip. I got introduced to AA when I was 16. I could have been introduced when I was 6. Not that I was drinking daily at 6, but I should have been. I was restless, irritable, and discontent from the moment I woke up. And if you guys had brought a meeting into my kindergarten class, I would have been looking for a sponsor, after the meeting. I'd have been like, can we go get coffee? Mr. Adams, like, can we go? I was like, I'd never had this ability to be at peace, like no matter what, I was the youngest of 4 kids, and I grew up in a crazy alcoholic home. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. My sister's not here. It's not my dad's fault, but it was crazy. There was stuff that happened there that I didn't understand, but I absorbed every little piece of that. And I use that, as our book talks about, as a lifelong excuse, blame my old man for everything I could. And as I said, I was born with this restless, irritable discontent, but the allergy didn't come out till I was about 11. I had some experiences with alcohol before then. My parents would have these little parties, and then Saturday morning you'd get up and you'd watch cartoons, and you'd go downstairs and you'd get the beer can and shake it for that cigarette butt roulette. You know, it's like, is that a cigarette butt? I'm not sure. You know, I don't see one. You know, and you throw it down and whatever. But you know, the craving hadn't started. The allergy wasn't ignited. But I was 11 years old. I was the youngest of 4 kids. I was at my sister's wedding, and my uncles thought it would be a really fun idea to get me drunk. And they were right. My sister didn't think so because it was her wedding. And that very first night, I drank with the intention to get drunk. I drank till I got absolutely blackout, pee my pants, throw up from my toenails, pee myself drunk. And I'm not going to say I ruined the night because they're still married, thankfully. But I made it interesting. You know, this is what I remember. The next morning, there was this little breakfast for the bride and groom to send them off to wherever they were going on a honeymoon, and the conversation came up of my behavior the night before. And my dad was really excited that he wasn't the one in trouble this time. You know, because he was the neighborhood drunk. Like, you weren't allowed to come to my house because my dad's the drunk. You know, I mean, everyone knew he was a drunk. You know, parked his car on the wrong lawn. You know, facing the wrong direction, all the time. And you know, but it was like it was the late '70s and the early '80s, and like no one knew how to do it. At least where we were, anything to do with that. You know, but the conversation was about my behavior, and I had this old battle axe aunt. Her name was Aunt Martha. She'd been on and off my resentment list for 35 years, and not because of this, but one thing in particular. She said, "I bet he'll never do that again," because they were talking about how sick I was. And I remember thinking, let's go right now. I'm ready right now. And I was very fortunate. My old man owned a number of bars, and his little story was he'd get his life together, he'd open a bar. Didn't last very long. Bar would go broke, but a lot of booze would come home. And we had a regular single-family home, and our basement was loaded with alcohol. I mean, it was just, there was literally aisles of it. You know, I mean, you could just walk down and take whatever you wanted. Like, you know, it was glorious. I didn't have to pay some wino to, you know, here, extra $5 to get a Mad Dog 2020 or, you know, like, I mean, I was drinking the good stuff from the get. I mean, I was very fortunate, and I really was. I mean, and I wasn't a daily drinker at 11 or 12, but if I could have been, I would have been. And I'll just briefly tell you, I think it's briefly okay to talk about drugs. Our book briefly mentions drugs if you've ever read it, so it's briefly okay to talk about it in a meeting. It just got me here faster. It just microwaved my disease. It got me consequences that were worse than the drinking would have got me. And it just got me here faster. You know, I remember when I found the right combination of drugs and alcohol. I was where every budding alcoholic is, with his friends in the woods. Right, that's where you go. That's where you go. That's Loserville, and my friend had said there was like this little urban myth going around, like the first time you smoke, it sometimes doesn't have the effect. Sometimes like that's just, I guess, like a physiological thing or anomaly or something. And I remember telling him, "Oh no, that's not going to happen to me, brother." And we smoked and smoked and smoked and smoked and smoked so much that day, with the right amount of drinking. I remember the log I was sitting on, and I remember saying, "I am going to do this for the rest of my life. I do not care what the consequences are." 13 years old. Take my future. The restless, irritable, and discontent was so bad. If I hadn't found alcohol and drugs when I did the way that I did, I'd have killed myself. I believe that with all my being. And unfortunately, I had the allergy. You know, as our book describes at the beginning of We Agnostics, you know, if you can't control the amount you take, and you can't limit the amount you take, or you can't stop when you want to stop, you're probably an alcoholic. And that was the case for me. And I got fired from every job that I ever had because I would make my way to the cash register. You know, they'd be like, "What are you good at?" You know, during the interview at the drugstore or whatever. I'm like, "Well, I'm pretty good at math. You know, I'm pretty good at counting real quick, math, and you know, because everything was cash those days. You know, there was no real inventory system. You know, and you know, it was like $5 for them, $5 for me, and you you know. And I had no moral compass, like, and I had so much rage for my old man. Like, I would just steal whatever he had. You know, he would pass out in his bed, and his pants would be on the floor with the wallet in it. And I would do that G.I. Joe crawl across the floor in the morning so that if he, you know, cracked open a quarter of an eye, he couldn't see me, you know, because I'm down the floor. And I would just take whatever I could get away with. You know, if there's $100 in there, you can't take 97, you know, but you can take 40, you know, because he was drunk, you know. But he would come home from the bar with these night bags, these night depository bags that were canvas, and they had these big metal zippers on them. Remember that back in the day? You put them there used to be a hole in the wall of the bank. And you'd throw that thing in there and you'd slam it up. But his bars were in pretty cruddy parts of town, and he had this old beat-up Cadillac, and one day he came back and there was a bunch of bullet holes, so he stopped stopping at the bank to do that. And so I found the bags. I'm like, oh. And so I would go in there, you know, take what I wanted. And finally I said, you know, it'd probably be smarter if I just took the whole bag, you know. And I did. And there was like $1,700 in it. Something like that, you know. And so I'm like at the bus stop, 13 years old, with $1,700 in my cash. And I wish I could tell you that, like, I'm a slave to crack at this point, and I had to. That wasn't the case. I mean, I want to be the big shot, you know. I want to, you know. And I didn't get caught, so guess what I did? I know Amy knows. I did it again. And then one day my mother opened my closet drawer, and there was like 57 pairs of Air Jordans, you know, and like 4 leather coats, and she's like, I mean, she was an Al-Anon, but I couldn't even lie that one away. And but what happened that day was my old man said, listen, you were dead to me, and I will feed you and clothe you till you're 18, but then the minute you turn 18, you're out of here. But don't even look at me, don't even talk to me. And I gave him the double barrel middle fingers and said, well, you've been dead to me a long time. And off to the races I went. I did whatever I wanted to do after that. My mom was done raising kids, and my disease just took off. You know, every bridge that I ever walked across, I burned it to the ground. It did not take long until, you know, no matter how much money I had, no one wanted to have anything to do with me. You know, that's a rough day when you call your boys and you say, listen, I got a pocket full of money, and they're like, click, you know. What's your problem? And I had a little bad stretch of bad breaks and misunderstandings with the police department. I got arrested 3 times by the same cop on the same road, in the same car with the same buddy by the same cop within like a 5-block radius in like 6 weeks. That takes skill. You know what I'm saying? Like not your average idiot can get that done. And the 3rd time was so pathetic. You know how they come over with the metal flashlight and they bang it on the window and it makes that terrible clanking noise? And the 3rd time, we just pretended like we didn't see him. You know. You know. And he clank, 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 and we had to roll the window down. I'll explain that to some of our younger friends earlier. And I rolled the window down, and he looked at us with disgust, like not even disgust, just like some really sincere empathy. He's like, what are y'all doing? We just did this. And I'm going to share with you how full flight from reality I was. I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but this is what I thought. I could have passed a lie detector test amidst a challenge of a firing squad of being wrong. I would have told you that the reason why he pulled us over was he was black and we were white. I had no idea that the reason why he pulled us over, I couldn't fathom the idea, was that we were driving around a 1972 Datsun B210 that was mustard orange, green door, no floorboards, 47 Grateful Dead stickers on the back, and smoke trailing out of it like the Cheech and Chong mobile. That is not why he pulled us over, you know what I mean? And the reality is, I could not drive from my buddy's house to my house without something. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. A couple months later, my school expelled me, which was really difficult to do. I grew up in this little well-to-do suburb outside of Washington, D.C. called Montgomery County. At one point, there were super uber wealthy parts. That's not where I lived. I grew up in a regular old suburbia neighborhood. But it was really tough to do. Like, they did not hold kids back in those days. They didn't want this thing on their record, right? Like, where I went to school, if you were alive and you showed up for school on the first day of school, they put you in the next grade. That's all you had to do, was show up and breathe. I mean, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the last book that I had read was Curious George Goes to the Circus. That's not supposed to be funny. Like, I mean, that is the truth. Like, I knew nothing. I knew nothing when I got here. Absolutely nothing. And it was just a mess. They threw me out, and I met my Ebby. My Ebby showed up. I had been in night school and summer school every year since puberty because I couldn't go to class. I remember this one really specific point, and I talk about this all the time. I had this vice principal, and he called me in and said, "John, you have exceeded the maximum unexcused absences in the state of Maryland. But we will make an exception for you." They always made exceptions for me, always. And they do that for all of us, right? And I used to think it was because, like, we're really cool, special people. No. They want to get rid of us. So if someone's making an exception for you, that's not the reason. Remember that. He said, but, can you show up the next 11 days? If you can show up the next 11 days, we'll put you on to the next grade. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be here, brother. Because summer school sucks and night school sucks. And I'm not going again. It's awful. And then like 2 days later, this dude looks just like Brian in the hallway. He's like, hey, I got an idea. I got a bottle. And what happens is this transformation inside of me. I'm a little restless, irritable, and discontent. I haven't had something to drink since the night before, probably. Most likely. 50-50. And I think I changed my mind. I say, you know what, man? Night school was actually pretty good last year. That cute girl was there, and summer school was good. That guy had the good stuff. So, heck with it. And I go do what I want to do. And I don't know this. I'm powerless at this point. I'm completely under the grips of our disease. I don't have the ability to say no. What happens to me is I wind up in front of people of authority. Principal, judges, cops, bosses, mothers, parents, whatever, PTA members. And they open up this folder and they're like, oh, John, we don't, and they mean this, they're like, we don't understand what's going on with you. Why do you do these things? Why do you do things that are not in your best interest? We're dumbfounded. Please tell us. We want to know. We want to help you. And I sit in my chair, I scoot my butt back, I put my elbows on my knees, and I stare at the ground and play a game of silent chicken. And if I lose that game that day with that person, I give them the best 3-word answer I got. Brian, tell me what it is. I don't know. And it's the truest thing I've ever said. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I certainly know something's wrong with me. Not only because you've been telling me since birth, John, what's wrong with you? But I've felt that to my core. There's something broken within John, and that's nobody's fault. That's just the way it was. And so back to my Ebby, I'm end up in night school because I can't go through a day of class, and I'm sitting in this computer class. And back then, computers were not very exciting in 1987 or 88. They were green blinking squares. That's it. And there's about 20 of us in there, and what time did we start? 8:15? 8:20? 8:30? Okay. I am blissed out of my mind, and there's about 20 of us in there, and we had a little break, and back then you could smoke on school property. You were smoking, and teacher was probably out there smoking with us, and you used to be able to smoke anywhere. It was glorious. And he says, but this is the magic happened. For the very first time, he said, and so I had all these charges from this racist cop I told you about, and the stuff is hitting the fan. The stuff is hitting the fan in my life, and this guy, I can picture his face. I know what he looks like. His name was John G. And he said, hey, man, after class is over tonight, we're going to go down to the Rockville Metro AA Club. There's a 10:30 candlelight meeting. Do you want to go? I had never talked to this cat before in my life. I'm not sure if it was my attitude or my aroma, but he didn't ask anybody else if they wanted to go, right? He didn't pass out, permission slips for a field trip, like, let's go visit the drunks, right? Like, he had some crazy sponsor that made him try to work with other new guys, and, when you're a young guy and in recovery, like, the only guys you can help typically, or not the only guys, but typically the guys that are even younger than you, or newer than you. And so he saw me, and I said, and I'd heard about the A&A. My dad had a liver transplant and had a year of forced sobriety because he had a liver, right? I mean, he had a liver. And so I'd heard something about it, and I didn't know what, but I knew this would be good for my case. I'm really good at being good enough long enough until the person of authority stops monitoring whatever's going on, and then I go do what I want to do. Some people might call that dishonest. I didn't think it was, but I said, what do you do with this thing? And he said, well, we sit around this long table, and we drink a lot of coffee, and we smoke a lot of cigarettes, and we talk about not drinking. I said, on purpose? And he said, yeah, we don't drink on purpose. And I didn't grasp that. I was like, well. And I said, yeah, I'll go. And I had to call my mother for permission. I know it's so pathetic, but I did. Like back then, you didn't have these cool GPS bracelets, that we have on our ankles. You know what I'm talking about? In Tennessee, they call it the Irish Rolex. They do. And so the judge released me and my mother. And so I said, Mom, I had a payphone. Called my mother, and I said, this guy wants to take me to A&A meeting class. She said, please go. Click. I'm like, and the best description I've ever heard of this AA club, it was a crazy, wild, toxic AA club. Never seen a big book AA club. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you guys have any of those. The best description I've ever heard of this was like the bar scene of Star Wars. Every walk of life was in there. Bikers and bankers and hookers and lawyers, and Chewbacca was nodding off in the corner, And my soulmate, Princess Leia, was sitting by the door, I remember because it was a candlelight meeting, and I saw her. I swear to God, this is true. I'm like, she's pretty hot, and I think she wants me. And and then like at the meeting, they turned the lights up like halfway, so we'd all stand up and pray. And I looked over at her, and she had better days. And not that I'm like, but she was at the beginning stages of recovery. And anyways, but like the magic happened there for me. And the magic I want to describe is that like no one preached at me. No one wagged their finger at me and said, you need to do this, you ought to do this, you should do this, you could have done this, What's the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous is that you can't argue with experience. They shared with me what they were like, and that resonated deep within me. I was like, oh, these are my people, as Mike would say. These are my people. And then they talked about what they did, which was the steps. And I, whatever. Sure you did, dude, But then they talked about the way their life was like today, and I really didn't even listen to that, but I watched it. And they could do some things that I couldn't do. And I believed it, better than believing anything else I'd ever believed. But I wasn't ready, and so I went off and, I stayed for like 6 days and stopped going, long story short. And March of the following year, I wound up in front of a judge, March or April. One of the convenient things of getting arrested in such close proximity of time is that the judge is more inclined to bundle all your stuff together. And so I had, for our friends who are thinking about going back out, let's just get it all done together. And I had 16 felonies, which, no, it's not, it wasn't that bad. No, I'm serious. I'm not trying, you know how there's like, when you get arrested for something, like, they make stuff up. It's like conspiracy to distribute, thinking about distributing, almost distributing. You distributed yesterday, and you got 6 felonies, and you're like, I just had a bunch of bags and a scale, dude. Like, what are you talking about? 6 felonies, Anyways, and so I'm a couple of months shy of turning 18, and I'm high and drunk, probably in court, and the judge says, hey, listen, the state of Maryland has been wise enough to start the nation's first recovery high school. If you can either go there for 6 months, or you can go do your time 18 months at the James Hickey Reformatory School. Now, I'm not a criminal, but well, maybe I am, but I'm not a convicted criminal at this point, and I know James Hickey Reformatory School is not really like a school, and then he lands it with, he's like, oh, and when you turn 18, then you got to go to the adult jail. And I'm like, oh, treatment sounds pretty good, and they had an opening July 5th, 1989, which by God's grace and you incredible people, I haven't had a drink since, but I hope you know you're clapping for Alcoholics Anonymous. That's a fact. I want to talk about recovery, and I'll give you a quick microcosm of my really early recovery. I'm this crazy kid. I've been sentenced to this 6 months in this program. I zipped right through it in 16 months. They released me. I'm 19 years old, and I got 0 skills, man. But there was some forced sobriety, and the fog lifted. I fell in love with the fellowship. I fell in love with what we do, but I'm getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And I'm so crazy, I just can't stand it. I can't sleep at night. I can't do anything. My life is it wasn't more unmanageable, but it felt more unmanageable because I'm not under the influence, and I'm dying inside, man. And I had this road dog, and he went back to drinking and drugging, and the first Gulf War broke out in 1991. And my grandfather was a 2-star admiral in the Navy. That's a big deal. And his sons went through the Naval Academy. That's a big deal. And so the Gulf War broke out, and I said, I got an idea. I went down and I enlisted, and then I went to my sponsor's house to see if it was a good idea. That is my early recovery. That's the first 10 years of my recovery. Ready, fire, aim, and I remember the look on his face. He was like, what did you just say you did, John? And so my visions of being a war hero were long gone. If you remember, that war lasted 7 days. And so by the time they don't ship you out tomorrow, they ship you out in a few months. And in between the time that I shipped out and the time that I enlisted, I found this group in my home group that had that glow, glow I'm talking about. And now I really don't want to go because I'm starting to get a little bit of the peace. And what had happened right before them is, as I told you, I can't do anything right, stone cold sober. I can't sleep. I can't, and can't find a girlfriend. I can't keep a job, the whole bit. And my whole recovery was meeting based. If the meeting was really good, I had a pretty good day. But if the meeting sucked, my spiritual condition was in jeopardy. And I got dropped off at this meeting, and I like Diane, I'm a deal maker with God. I'm like, God, you got to do something tonight. I think I'm done. I think I'm done. This program really doesn't work. And I'd seen that group of glow of people, that group of people that glowed. And after the meeting, they'd have this in-depth conversation afterwards. It was, do we go to Bob's Big Boy or do we go to Denny's? But they had something that I wanted. They were able to really hug each other, embrace each other. They cried, they laughed with each other. They told each other they loved them. Their first thing was not to look at their shoes when they walked in the room. That's crazy stuff to a guy like me. And I so desperately wanted to go. And so after the meeting, I went up next to them, and I sent them telepathic messages to invite me to go. And I pretended to like clean up an ashtray, and they didn't ask me, and I was like, this AA is crap. It's not what I said. I'm walking home, I'm leaving. And I started walking out, and which was a mistake. My mom's house was 7 miles away. And so as I got to the corner, I know exactly where it was, East Goody and Rothgeb Drive. If I'm really gonna walk, I gotta go left. But everyone turns right out of there. And so like the last 200 yards or so, I slow my roll a little bit to give people a chance to reconsider their inconsiderate behavior. And I slowed down, and this dude Charles pulled up in this gray Citation that had burgundy pleather and a two-door. And Rick rolled down the window, and he looked over and he said, "Hey man, do you want to go to Bob's Big Boy with us?" And I'm still a little angry, and so I don't say, I'm not very bright, you know. I don't say, "Thank God I'm dying, I need your help." I can't do that. I just can't do that. But I'm smart enough not to say, "Screw you, old man," you know, which is what I wanted to do. And so I said the best thing I could think of. I said, I don't have any money. He said, "Seeing that you're walking, your financial position really wasn't in question." And he didn't say these exact words, but he said something else with as much love as I've ever seen out of this cat. I never saw any more than that night. He said something to the effect of, "Dude, just get in the car." And I suspect it's all the hands that we've seen here tonight of new people. Some of you just got in the car, you know, and I'm grateful that you got in the car. And they were smart. They put me in the middle of the booth, and we drank coffee and smoked cigarettes and ate pancakes all night long, just kind of, you know, pancake, coffee, cigarette, camp, you know. And I mean, this old guy, I mean, he was like prehistoric dinosaur. He was 50. And I'm 52. But this old dude loved me, man. He loved me so much. Like, he would drive like 30 minutes to my house and pick up this raggedy loser 19-year-old and take him a half an hour to meeting, and then back to his house for dinner, and then back to my house. I mean, this dude just drove me everywhere. Like, I was not a high-value draft pick. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was not a good sponsee. I did nothing he suggested. It was not an act of merit, you know. He just did what he knew how to do, you know, and man, and I got married real quick, and she left real quick, and in less than a year, and it forced me to do some work. Because even though I did not want her to stay, I'd failed one more time. I was a loser one more time. Oh, I didn't tell you this. So they shipped me out. I'm in the Navy. I told you, right? I'm in the Navy. They shipped me out. And it is hot in here. And I go to San Diego, and what they do is they shave your head, they take your stuff, they send it home, and they march you for 48 hours. They bring you in a room this big, swear to you, this big, 2,000 recruits in there, and then everyone's, you know, quiet for like 15 minutes, and an officer comes in, stumbling, bumbling, kicking a trash can, metal trash can. He says, "Today is the moment of truth day." This is before computers. He says, "If you lie to the United States Navy, we will find out at some point. It might take us 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but we'll find out, and you're going to get dishonorable discharge. It's going to stay with you the rest of life like a bad sexually transmitted disease. But if you are honest with us today, we will send you home with a general discharge. If you lied about drug use, go into that corner and see this officer. If you lied about being arrested, go into that corner. If you lied about psychiatric care, go into that corner. If you lied about being in jail, go into that corner." I swear to you, this is true. All my life, this is true. And I'm in the middle of the room. And this is what I did. He was so dumbfounded. I guarantee you, no one had ever put their hand up before. He said, "I'll slow down." He said, "What is it, son?" I said, "Where do you go if you lied about all four?" And he said, you come with me. And so the best I can do of my own willpower, self-will run riot, is serve my country for 48 hours. They put me in the Navy brig for 14 days and sent me home a loser. And then the first girl I could find, we got married. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I mean, the clock was ticking. I'm 21. You know what I'm saying? And she left. And so here I am with Charles, the guy that picked me up. And we're at his kitchen table. And I didn't do a good fourth step. Searching and fearless, not on my agenda. Shallow and cowardly, okay. And, but like, you know, he shared his story and I shared my story. And the magic happened, like, because this guy was exactly the opposite of me. He was short, he was overweight, he was black, he was very well educated, and he was very wealthy. We were complete opposites by any measure that you choose to use. We were opposites, and we were exactly the same. And I fell in love with this dude, and he was my sponsor for a while. And then my wife rolled into an AA meeting that I told you about, Renee, and we started on this journey of once we got rid of the other spouses. She had a little baby girl, and I fell in love with the baby girl first, and then I fell in love with Renee. And matter of fact, our sponsors were married, and we decided we were going to do something different. Like we were going to put AA first, no matter what. We were going to keep the P word first, and it's not the P word y'all are thinking about, the priority word, and we did. And we, as Bill talks about, boy meets girl on AA campus, and we just started this AA incredible life together, and started having kids every 9 months and 5 minutes, and it was awesome, man. We had this incredible little brood of kids, you know, and they love being with us, and it's magical what can happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. But what I really came to tell you here tonight is, you know, really a story of redemption and a story of forgiveness. At about 16 years of sobriety, I started veering off our path. We were talking about that at dinner, you know, and just trying to satiate self. I really don't have a perfect explanation for it today, but I don't have time to go to the meeting because I really got to go see this client because I got to make some extra money. I got to get a bigger house. I got more kids. She needs, you know, she got this little bitty hoopty. She needs a minivan. I need to, you know, we need to save money for a vacation. I got to, you know, and a lot of that's just the American dream and kind of what a lot of us men are built to do or trained to do or bred to do, whatever, is just go conquer the world. And I started taking that on. And, you know, I'm still going to meetings, but I'm coming a little late, leaving a little early, and I don't have time for commitment or anything like that, you know, but I'll do that when I'm later, you know. I'll do that when I'm old and like Charles. And I started getting off our path. And I need to speed this up. But in 1 year's period of time, I completely ruined every aspect of my life. This business I had got repossessed by the guy I bought it from. The IRS had garnished our checking accounts 3 times. The lights were being turned off. Our house was in foreclosure. I got arrested for not paying speeding tickets in sobriety. That's fun. I literally had just finished having dinner with a sponsee. I pulled out, got pulled over. My license was suspended. Thank God he didn't drive by, right? Call me tomorrow. Thank God. And I mean, we didn't have like, it was a mess. And our house was attached to the loan for this business, and like, you know, I'm just, I can't put my hand up at a meeting 18 years sober and tell you what's going on because you're going to think I'm not working the program. And everybody knew I wasn't working the program, but you know, what we think is powerful. And there's not a person in that room that wouldn't have laughed with me and loved with me and said, oh, we'll figure this out, John. We'll get it right. Let's go to the detox. You know, that's what they would have told me. And but I wanted to fix it. I wanted to fix the bank account. Let me fix the bank situation. And but then I traded in the thing that I valued most, and that was my fidelity to my wife. And it broke my wife. It broke her. And I have her permission to tell you this. She struggled with eating disorder her whole life, and she was 140 pounds, and she lost about 50. And our life was falling apart, and everything I touched would just continue going, and I'm dying inside. And It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm on the kitchen floor crying like a schoolgirl, thinking rifle or shotgun. And this woman came down and put her hand on my shoulder and told me it was going to be okay. She wasn't looking after her husband that night. She was looking after another alcoholic. And I sat there in this quicksand, as Bill would say. And I remember thinking, man, AA doesn't work. Look at my life. I'm 19 years sober. AA does not work. And I heard this little voice, sound like my first sponsor, say, dummy, you're not doing AA. And I had this moment of truth that I've never really had before, like, oh my God, I'm really not doing AA. And I said the best prayer that I've ever said in my life, before or since, and it was, God, fix me or kill me. Just do one of them quick. And through a bunch of God's little bank shots, I got introduced to a dude that had this crazy idea that our big book was an instruction manual. And he actually spoke here 25 years ago this weekend. And so I called this super old dude. He's 1,000 miles away. He doesn't know me. But I'd heard him talking. I'd heard the CD, talking about our tapers. Yeah. I had heard a tape. And he talked about doing the work in a way that I wasn't familiar with, the big book way. And I finally had enough, and I called this guy after enough procrastination. I said, man, you don't know me, but I'm getting ready to come up with my 20th AA anniversary. I'm not going to make it. Every day I'm driving to work thinking, do I put this into the embankment? My life insurance payment is still good. Do I put this into the side? So I called this cat up, and I said, man, will you help me? Will you do the 4-step with me? And he said, I don't know about the God of your understanding, but I just got off my knees this morning, and I asked God to send me somebody to help, and I guess you're it. I didn't know he said that damn prayer every morning, but, that day, because I didn't live like that. At that point, my prayers were, God, please fix this. I am uncomfortable. Fix this, not fix me. I'm just being honest with you. And we went on this journey together. And he said, I'm not going to do the 4-step with you. And I said, what are you talking about? I just told you my problems. I told you the diagnosis. I told you the solution. Let's get on it. And he said, I'll do all the steps with you. We're just going to open the book. We're going to read it. And we're going to follow the instructions. If you'll do that, I'll do it with you. And I said, I'm all in. And those of you that have done that, you know the results. I've had a spiritual awakening sufficient to overcome alcoholism. And I can tell you as a result of that, my life has changed in so many ways I can't even describe it. Obviously, I told you my beautiful wife and I are still together. Our family is still together, thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was so, we're such idiots. I'm going to say 2 things and I'm going to shut up. We are. I'm such an idiot, because I remember after that we're trying to work through it in the first year, and I remember thinking, this is never going to work. Her ex-husband had been unfaithful to her. And I thought, you're not getting over that twice. She's going to beat me over the head with this for the rest of my life. But I said, you know what? I love these 3 kids, and I don't have a place to stay. So I'm going to give this a year. I'm going to give this my all for a year. I'm back into this AA. I'm going to do that AA book so perfectly. They're going to put my story in it. I didn't say it to myself, but I am going to do this perfectly. And if it doesn't work, then I'm done. Then I can really say I'm done. And what I didn't know is that she had done the work. I knew she had done the work, but I didn't know the effects of the work that she had done. And she didn't carry that crap into our marriage for the first time. And it was a long road. They say it takes 5 years to recover from something like that. And that was true in our case. And I'm going to tell you what was the breaking point. The final piece, if you will, not the breaking point, the final piece that put us back together. Because things were good. Things were really good. But there was a piece of her, and I have her permission to tell us, there was a piece of her that wasn't invested. And she's doing the AA deal. She's doing all her stuff. And I was at this men's retreat, and we had stopped at a treatment center. I'd met this young cat that I really fell in love with. And we had stayed in contact a little bit, and he didn't stay sober and was back on the streets. And I was talking to his dad. And I said, man, he was down in Florida, and I said, I got an empty basement. Just put his butt on a plane, bring him up here. We got a great network of AA. Bring him up here, and we'll take care of him. And his dad bought him a ticket, and I don't know how he got a ticket. He got a ticket and threw up on it. So his dad picks him up, takes him to the airport to send up to our house. And then I called my wife and asked her if it was okay. And I said, hey, I got this guy I want to put in the basement. And he wasn't the first person we had in our basement. Our house was AA home. And she said, what? She said, have you seen our basement? It looked like Sanford & Son. Like all the extra stuff was down there. She's like, my dad just got diagnosed with cancer, and Brenda's coming home for the Christmas, or whatever it was. All this, all these stuff. I didn't consider her. She's like, well, I guess it's all right. Can he wait a week? I was like, well, the plane leaves in an hour, and but I can send him back if you want, And she said, we'll figure it out. And she and a bunch of her AA girls got down there and cleaned that basement up. By the time I got down there, it looked like one of the rooms in here, And this guy got on a plane to go somewhere he had never been to try to stay sober in late fall, a pair of shorts, a pair of shoes that weren't his, and a T-shirt, and that's it. And he was kind of lost so much weight. He was the exact size as my son. And so he came down, a good-looking kid, and my kids just loved him up. That was like they're the brother they never had. And my son brought him shorts and stuff and T-shirts. We went to Walmart and got all the good stuff they needed. And what happened was my wife could not escape being of service. Every day she had to be of service to this young man, because I went to work. I left him with her, and she credits that to being the final piece in her heart, right, was service. It could have been a woman, it could have been anybody, but that was what did it, I believe we are all connected to God. Like we have this umbilical cord at birth that we cannot separate. We can tie it in knots, we can stretch it out real so far that the bandwidth is so limited that we don't hear that message of God. Kind of like old dial-up internet, remember that, AOL? Like, we can do that, but we cannot separate that line from God. We can feel like we're separated, but we can't be separated from God. And when my wife was having our second child, Savannah, she was in the delivery room, you know what that looks like, stickers, monitor, all this stuff. And the baby's heartbeat flatlined. Beep, and things get really exciting in the delivery room when that happens. And the nurse, doctor, they're all rushing in, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? They're getting ready to slice my wife open and do this C-section. And this old school nurse, uses her butt, and she pushes the doctor out of the way, and she says, hold on, doc, give me 1 minute. And she said, here, baby, roll over on all fours. And she said, reach your hand out here and reach your leg out here. And like 15 seconds, beep, 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 baby's heartbeat came back. And the baby was born perfectly healthy. She's a lawyer today, sorry. And but she uses her law degree to serve us, and she helps trafficked women, and she's a servant. She's one of God's servants. And but right before my wife right before we got discharged, I grabbed this old school delivery nurse and I said, what in the hell happened in there? And she said, sometimes right before the baby gets delivered, they get so scared, they squeeze their own umbilical cord so hard they stop their flow from their mother. And that is what we do with God. And so we come in here and we get sponsees and sponsors and road dogs and networks, and a day at a time, a step at a time, we release that grip on that umbilical cord that's been killing us all along, right? Like, as our friend Bob says, this is not a program of addition, it's one of subtraction. And that's why I have to stay in the middle of this deal. So somebody can look at me and say, John, you're squeezing. It's not this out here. It's John squeezing. And so if you're one of our older members, I beg of you to stay here. We need you desperately. We need you desperately. I get to do this a lot, and every time, sometimes especially when they do the line and stuff, I always get this old guy that says, you know, I used to sponsor people, and I used to go to the detox and prison and stuff, and I always want to say, man, I bet you used to be pretty happy too. You know, like, don't be a used to be, right? Like we need the experienced members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We need you desperately. I love you guys. I love AA. Thanks.